Good afternoon. This is a Devar Torah on Parshas Vayikra. It's the first Parsha of the third book and of the Chumash of the Torah, and it gets its name from literally the first word in that first Parsha, Vayikra, which I'll have a lot to say about shortly. In any event, the Parshas here are dealing with different types of sacrifices, and they're going to be dealing with Yom Kippur and various types of spiritual impurity and cleansing, and also discussing the korbanot, the sacrifices one has to bring if one is guilty of an avera b'shogeg, which literally, I can't translate it literally, but means one that was done by reckless disregard. It wasn't deliberate, but proper care wasn't being taken, and therefore one did things one wasn't supposed to, and the Parsha will discuss that. What I would like to focus on in this Devar Torah is the first pasuk of the Parsha. Vayikra el Moshe v'yedaber Adonai elav ma'oel moed lemor. He called to Moshe, meaning God, and Hashem spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying. Now the question is, why this double language? What does it mean in the first place? Why did he have to call them Moshe? And there's a whole other group of things here. And what I'd like to also show that every single, from this share, the Torah, that every single verse of the Torah has meanings on many, many levels and many, many depths, since it was written by Hashem, ultimately, who was perfect and infinite. Now, and another feature I'm going to be discussing is the word Vayikra has a small aleph. And it's going to be almost like it's a separate word, aleph. So I'm going to be explaining that also. Now, this can be understood on many different levels. One explanation given by the Ramban is that the whole Mishkan, the tabernacle, been built to, it's a resting place for the Shekhinah, God's presence, and his sacrificial service. It was so awesome that it said at the end of last week's Parsha Pekudei, after the Mishkan had been established, that since Hashem's glory filled it, covered it, Moshe could not enter. Now, in this week, we're going to see, according to most sources, that he does. And the Chachamim say that anytime is coming to teach us that before Hashem would give Moshe any commandment in their private communications, because Moshe spoke to Hashem par, as is explained later in Parshas Vayikra and Sefer Midbar, the next book of the Chumash. It says he calls to Moshe lovingly, Hashem, every time, Moshe, Moshe, and he would say, Hineni, I'm here at your service. Now Hashem's voice could have reached the whole world. It reached the entire Jewish people initially, and so why, if Hashem was so powerful, why did only Moshe hear it? And why didn't, according to most opinions, leave the confines of the actual Mishkan? For the very simple reason Only Moshe merited receiving it. But we have to realize that that applies to all of us, even today. And this is Rabbi Moshe Feinstein explains, the Torah is meant for those as much as those who left Egypt. In other words, we have to take it that as if all the commandments have been given to each individual Jew, each individual Jewish neshama throughout the generations. This is as explained by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Now, that's one level. But there's many lessons to be learned from this. First of all, it was to show Moshe kavod, to show him respect. And we see that that happened 3 times that it's announced. One time was when Moshe was by Har Sinai, when he was still shepherd for Yithro, his father-in-law's sheep, and he saw this bush, this burning bush. And I've explained in more detail when in Parshas, my Devar Torah Parshas Shmos. In any event, Moshe was again summoned. He came, and then Hashem calls to him, and then it tells him it's sacred ground. That's one. Second of all, we see that Moshe, beyond that, was received at Har Sinai. The voice went to Hashem, was first, he communicated with Moshe, then he communicated with the entire Jewish people. But ultimately, for the 40 days and 40 nights, when Moshe was getting the rest of the Torah, the communication was strictly private. Now, there are some other lessons that can be taken from this pasuk. Now, what I'm speaking here is direct remez, allusion, not illusion, allusion with an A. Why did he communicate it? That when Hashem spoke to Moshe, as the Or HaChaim explains, it was his intention that Moshe should tell the Jewish people right there in the Old Maid all that Hashem commanded him. This is why it places the word from the Oel Moed. It could have said, it says, and Hashem spoke to him from the Oel Moed. It could have said, and Hashem spoke from the Oel Moed to him. Now, from there, they learned 2 things. They said the first one is they placed the Oel Moed to say next to each other, meaning that he was to say these matters to the Jewish people. And why? Because there'd be an awe of Hashem when they gave it and listened to his commandments. Why? Because they realized they're in the presence of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And remember, this was the Kapora for the golden calf. Additionally, they put Moshe's words to be taken more seriously. It says, right in the presence of Hashem. That's another understanding of this verse. But beyond this, there's another meaning. It says like this: by saying to him, and then from the Oel Moed, that Moshe only reached this level of being able to hear Hashem's commandments for a very simple reason, which is that only reason he merited was because of the sin of the golden calf had been forgiven, and Hashem dwelling in a Oel Moed was a sign of that. And because, in other words, it's Shemesh spoke to him on account of the Moed. And if it had not been forgiveness, Hashem would not have spoken to him. So, as great as Moshe was, and even though, for reasons I'll explain a bit more later, he was the only one who merited it, still, despite that, it was only in the merit of the Jewish people. So, in other words, we must respect our greatest leader. Moshe was the greatest of them all. Yet, despite that, the Torah is meant for the entire Jewish people, and it's only we as a collective nation, as a people collectively maintaining unity, can we truly achieve what Hashem is seeking from us, a lesson that should be taken. Now, that's another explanation. Now, again, as I said, this verse has great depth. And now I want to quote from the Vilna Gaon, Rav Eliyahu from Vilna, and he explains a couple of things. When it says Vayikra el Moshe v'yidaber, it says, and he called to Moshe and spoke Hashem, Ilav, upon him. We have to learn, one thing we learn is Derek Eretz, that you don't speak to your fellow friend unless he calls to you. In other words, you don't start conversations with a person, at least somebody in these kind of holy contexts, unless you call upon first. He calls upon you first. And another meaning, so an addition, and as he said, he goes on to say, we saw that with the burning bush and giving of the Torah. That from all made, before he's going to speak, he's called and then spoken to. And that's something we should take with great respect. We should call to somebody, make them feel important. And I'm adding this before they do it. And it says, "Oh Moshe," and it has a further meaning. That why did Moshe have to be called to and go to Olam Moed? Because it said at the end of Parshas Vayikra that he was not able to enter, and only with God's commission can he enter. And Moshe, being the most modest of men, if he hadn't gotten an express call from Hashem, one from a loving expression, he would not have entered the Mishkan, because that was the level of, he was the most brilliant Torah Talmud Chacham, but as Hashem later says, he was also the most modest of men. In fact, that's why about the Torah, we see a later example of that, the Shulchan Aruch, the book of the Jewish Code of Law, which was written by Rav Yosef Karo, and there's an explanation that there were 4 people who in Sfat who would have been qualified to write it. And why did Rav Yosef Karo get it? Because in heaven it was decreed he was the most modesty. And modesty is very important, and not being humble, modest in that sense, in one's actions, one's behavior. And that is another teaching. Now, I'd like to look at the little letter Aleph. As you see the word Vayikra, it's spelled Vav Yud Kuf Resh with a little Aleph. And the little Aleph represents a spiritual level of Malkut. largest level of words mean bina, and the normal text size words represents the zera anpin, represents a certain spiritual level, separate spiritual level. And there's some explanations of the word vayikra. Because the word vayikra, whose word is krah, to call, Shem showed he wanted to speak to Moshe. Now Moshe, now without it, it has a different context altogether. When Balaam, the prophet of the nations, but extremely evil individual, indicates spiritual contamination, impurity, which Balaam embodied. So why was Moshe, who was so great, why was he made so small? And this is something explained by the Baal of Turim. Because he was so humble, he did not want to be given any special notice or a special quality. He wanted to be at a higher level. He wanted to be at a low level. He wanted to be humble. So Hashem said he had to put it in, an expression of affection, add the aleph. However, Moshe, being the most modest of men, only put a smallest letter. And the word, another understanding is that aleph can also mean to teach. There should be one should be small and humble when teaching. Who that's another meaning. And I'd like to focus a little more on that aleph. We've now got the level of Parashat, a bit of an extended meaning, little meaning, and simple meaning. Now I would like to go a little deeper into the significance of this aleph. Now, and this is from the teachings of Rav Natan Nata Shapiro in Krakow, a very holy Rav from the 1600s, so holy that it says on his kever, his gravestone, Matzeva, that he spoke face to face with Eliyahu, the one of the few, maybe only times that was ever written on a gravestone of even the most righteous. And he, in explaining what the aleph was, is teaching us something on a Seder level. Is explained in the Zohar, Parshas Shalach, that after the maid, the golden calf, and because we see this intertie between Moshe Rabbeinu and his people, that all the lights were separated from Moshe and only remained rock one Zavanim. I'll explain what that means in a second. And now, Derek Remez, it then goes on to say that when it says Vayikra El Moshe, and it's so then you see Vayikra to Hashem, Marika, Aleph, that this one letter that is spoken, just one letter, is Mamayat. It's from all the oros. Now, what oros are we talking about? He doesn't explain it, but I would like to elaborate. What he is explaining here is the oros, the light of, I believe, the organos, the hidden light. At the time of the first 6 days of creation, before Adam and Chava committed the sin of eating from the fruit, the full light of Torah in all its greatness was revealed. It was then hidden because of the sin. Now, at the time of Moshe, before that, he received the entire organus because we received the Torah. We were elevated to the level of before Adam and Chava sin. As I said, if we hadn't done these sins, we could have gone straight into Israel. The whole history of the world would have been completely different. In any event, once that light, once they sinned, all but one small component of that light was taken away, of that light of the Torah, of the organus was taken away from Moshe. And showing that little olive is talking that only one mi'ut of all that light, only one was remaining, small part, and we've seen it, what was that light? That light was the light that shone from Moshe's face, the Karen Or, which has been misinterpreted to mean horns. It does not. The Karen Or, and that even that, because of the sin, the Egel Zahav was not able to be maintained. So this is why this little aleph is telling us that the most meyat, it was reduced to this one, not even one full thousandth of it, but a fraction of that thousandth. And which again shows, as I explained before, the interaction between the Jewish people and Moshe. Even though Moshe merited it, his merit only can come through the people as a whole. And only then did we merit great things. Now, that's one explanation of the Aleph. There's another one that the Megalit Mukot, the Rav from Krakow gave, which is, there's a remez. This is Moshe Omed, the Pesach Rishon, the first Pesach, the only thing was Pesach. Mazeh al Pesach Sheni. Now, that's finding a unity in growth. To explain that, what happened is he proclaimed the first one, and the second one he warned the people about. Now, who was and whose merit was the first Pesach? This was Likbal Abraham, and the second one was in connection with Yosef, and they had to be treated together. Those two go together. Now, in what sense did they go together? Because Abraham's name in Gematria is Reish Mem Chet. That's 248. Those are the positive mitzvahs of Hashem commanded. And Yosef Asadik, the Gematria of his name, is Shein Samek Hey, which is 368 of the prohibited commandments. And together they combine to represent the entire Torah. On another level, it's also a man upon whom this model Hashem has based both the higher worlds and the lower worlds, spiritual man, in the spiritual sense, not in the corporeal sense, that all of these also represent the 248 Gia of Virim, sinews, and the Gidon, veins, the other connections. And so when Moshe organized and built at Hashem's command the Mishkan, he was bringing that all together. And all those letters were established, meaning all the part of the Mishkan, and therefore all the letters and the completion of the purpose of creation. And I'm adding the purpose of creation. And therefore it says, Ama Vayikra El Moshe, the Aleph becoming Aleph Lamed, to calling to Moshe, because he had helped culminate the purpose of Hashem's creation. Now, I would like to add, we see here the few lessons, we can number them, but that we should, one of the things we should take from this, that the more we work as a people, the more unity is, that will support us going higher and higher, and that we represent, in a sense, the basis for the world. When we are up, we go higher in Torah and mitzvahs. It elevates the whole world. And therefore, may we merit to receive deeper and deeper understanding of the Torah and the mitzvahs. And may we go to higher and higher levels. Good Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, and good Shabbos.